All right, good morning, everybody. It's nice to see some faces. Welcome to our part two of getting together a comprehensive business plan. I am Aaliyah. I'll be your host today, and we have Chanel who will be facilitating. Just for you guys to know a little bit about Chanel, she is the executive director of TSK Wealth Planners, and she also founded the Sisters Keepers Wealth Planners in 2020. Her drive is to rid the Black community of poverty and other social disparities caused by social barriers. So, luckily, Chanel identifies as a woman in STEM, and she is also a member of the BIPOC community. She's well invested personally in the stock market and in real estate, and she is regularly contracted in multiple different positions and organizations, which are not limited to ABCM, MV, Consulting, Boys and Girls Club, Mount Dennis, Sheridan College, Humber, the bbpa, and much more. Chanel has her associate's degree in financial management, and she is currently completing her honors bachelor's or her honors BOC in finance, and she's on track to completing her master's. She has a lot more in her back pocket, and without further ado, I will welcome Miss Chanel.
Hello, professionals. Hi, Aaliyah. Thank you so much for that amazing intro every time. Today, we're going to be doing part two of creating a comprehensive business plan. Good morning, everyone. See who's in. Oh, we got a nice little gallery today. I hope everyone's doing well. I hope your week was well. As Aaliyah introduced, my name is Chanel Smith. I am the founder and executive director of TSK Wealth Planners, a nonprofit designed to create and provide financial literacy for marginalized and underserved groups. A bit of my background, she mentioned there, I have my associate's degree in financial management. I am now pursuant of my BOC, Bachelor of Commerce in finance, so that I can kind of fast track my master's there. I've got my CSC1 and my Bloomberg market certification in equity investments and fixed income. So I guess with that being said, you don't have to worry about me. Can I get some numbers and that in the chat really quick? Morley, good morning to you as well. Good to see you. If I can get some numbers, 4 is my number, but you can put my number, whatever number's your number in the chat. I want to make sure everybody's attentive, listening. If you're driving, don't bother. Awesome. Tumbra, good morning. I hope I said that right. Awesome. Okay, so I know you guys are with me. Sorry about that. Okay, I know I said last week that I would give everybody the opportunity to ask questions or any inquiries or anything like that. My apologies. Sorry about that, everyone. I sit right next to the office phone and it rings all throughout the day. Okay, so I said we would go over last week, which was create a company analysis, and I would give everyone the chance to ask any burning questions that they had from last week. So we went over a little bit of the quadrants and that we looked at how to create competitive advantage. And this is my opportunity to give anyone an opportunity to ask any questions that they had left over from last week. We did a little bit of an Apple analysis. We placed some of the companies where we could in Porter's competitive advantage scope. Okay, and the questions are coming in. Awesome. Aaliyah, if you could see those two, I'm just reading the presentation. Just interrupt me if you want and read out those questions. For those of you who weren't here last week, I will give a quick recap because this is a two-part. We essentially went through the 9 building blocks for businesses. So that consisted of things like customer segments, value propositions, channels, customer relations, revenue streams, key activities, et cetera, et cetera. So these 9 building blocks are essentially what is supposed to be the premise. You're an entrepreneur, even if you're not at startup phase, if you're at valuation phase, you want to cover these 9 building blocks. It's pretty much going to give you, an investor, any other stakeholder, the roundabout of the business. Once you've kind of gone through this, you want to start looking at competitive advantage. Once again, something that could be curated at the beginning of the process or that could be integrated through as part of the valuation. So we did a bit of Porter's competitive strategy, and we placed companies like No Frills, Porter, the airline company, Apple, Walmart, Gucci, some designer brands, Whole Foods on a bit of a quadrant. Sakshi, if you could put that quadrant up for those who weren't here last week. Slide 15. Awesome. So we just did this activity to give everyone the idea of how to create competitive advantage and where these companies fall when it comes to competitive advantage, whether they use price or whether they use product, unique design, that kind of stuff to make themselves competitive in whatever industry that they're in. I know I closed up, as I said, and asked copy of the recording. So Laura, yes, you should be able to get a copy of the recording. I think it's available on YouTube. And then for those of you also who weren't here last week, if that recap did it, give me a thumbs up. Let me see. If you have more questions along the way, feel free to type them in the chat or go ahead and interrupt me as well. So that's the recap for last week. Awesome. Awesome. Yeah, for sure. Sakshi, if we could get the 9 building blocks slide up, we could let it linger for a little bit while we give everybody a chance. Yeah, so the BBPA has let us know last week's session is available on YouTube. So if you're here today and you want to catch last week's session as well to kind of pull everything together, go ahead and do that. TSK Wealth or myself, Chanel, will also provide the BBPA with these slides, our lesson plan, so you guys can have access to this information going forward. Okay, so we looked at the very end at a company checklist. Awesome. Glad everybody's happy. I'm getting nice feedback. Amazing. First 10 minutes, great. So let's look at the company analysis checklist. That's slide 16. That's where we ended off there. We just let everybody know that in conclusion, we want to make sure we have business idea and value proposition. Value proposition differentiates from business idea in the sense of the value proposition is really focused on what you're bringing to the market or what you're bringing to the consumer or the customer, right? So it's just a little bit different. Your business idea might be about your fascination with glass water bottles, but you want to make sure your value proposition is about the value that you're bringing to the market or to the customer. So hopefully that's straightforward. You want to make sure you've done your market research, no matter how big or how small your company is. Identify the industries that you're in and your target audience, and then develop your business model with your 9 building blocks. Take a look at your revenue streams and how you plan to make money, and make sure you focus and you analyze that. And marketing and sales strategy, right? So that ties right into revenue stream and how you're going to make money with your business. If there's no other burning questions from last week, I think I addressed everything I saw so far. And Aaliyah will still be monitoring the chat. We'll go ahead. And today we are looking at industry analysis. So our part 2 is about industry analysis. And there wouldn't be an industry analysis without the Porter's 5 forces. So can somebody jump in, whether it's a type in the chat, whether it's coming off of mute? Can someone give me a little background on Porter's 5 forces? Have we seen this? Have we not seen it at all? Have we heard of it? What's going on? What do you guys know about Porter's 5 forces? Let's see what's up. Not familiar. Okay.
I've heard of it, but I think it was put into different formations. So maybe on another call that I was on, I believe they probably used different definitions, maybe.
Awesome. And who was that? And what do you do?
Oh, sorry, it's Desiree. I was trying to change my name from Couture Images. That's my company.
Yes.
It's Desiree Couture, and I am a fashion stylist.
Awesome. Nice to meet you, Desiree. Yeah, no, that's okay. I'll ask you that regardless. I just want everyone to have the chance to network in here, even when we're not thinking about it. So Desiree from Couture Images. Awesome. Thank you for that. Let's get the next slide, Sakshi. We'll go into Porter's 5 forces in a little bit more detail. So we'll start here. Porter's 5 forces, power of suppliers. And yes, as Desiree mentioned, the names are often toggled depending on what you're learning or what you're learning about. The names might be tweaked a bit, but by definition, there's no change. So whether we're saying power of suppliers or influence of suppliers or influence of customers or power of customers interchangeably, the definition is still the same. What it means to the 5 forces is going to remain unchanged. So of the 5, we've got power of suppliers, potential of new entrants, availability of substitutes, competition in the industry, and power of buyers. So before Sakshi gets the definitions up, before you do that, we're just going to go ahead and see if anyone knows what the power of suppliers is. And if you don't know and you're not familiar with Porter's Five Forces, this is a really, really good opportunity. Porter's Five Forces is a renowned theoretical framework that in the industry, no matter what industry you are in of business, it's going to be assumed that you know it and that you're familiar with these things. It's almost like typical business jargon. So go ahead, take your chances. What do we think the power of suppliers is? Shoot your shot. What is power of suppliers about? You can go ahead and type, or you can come off of mute. What do we think the power of suppliers is? Okay, Morley says, the suppliers have influence on the market. Awesome. Thank you. You've done my job for me. So let's pop up that definition there. Suppliers of scarce or limited parts can have significant pricing power. So to Morley's definition, the power of suppliers entirely refers to the power that suppliers have over the market or the industry that you're in. What does this mean? Okay, if I manufacture Hondas, someone who manufactures Honda steering wheels is a supplier to me, right? How much power that person has, so the supplier of the materials of whatever the product is or service that I'm providing, of course, so on and so forth, whatever power that individual has is the power of the supplier. So I used examples because by definition, oftentimes the Porter's Five Forces can get confusing. So with these examples, I've made it very clear whether we want this to be high, low, what it looks like and how it affects us. And then this will come back in the future. So we want to remember that suppliers of scarce or limited parts can have significant pricing power. So they have lots of power, they have lots of influence, meaning they slightly have control, right? So if someone can answer me this subsequent or this follow-up question, which is, if suppliers have power or kind of have influence in a situation where resources are scarce or limited, can someone give me a juxtaposition? So someone give me an example, kind of like I just gave you guys an example. Give me an example of where suppliers maybe won't have that much power because the resources are endless in this industry. Everyone's kind of creating it, so on and so forth. Can someone give me an example of that just to make sure everybody gets the power of suppliers? And sometimes that is said as bargaining power of suppliers or influence of suppliers. But someone let me know, can you think of an example, an industry, a company, a product, anything along those lines where maybe the supplier does not have significant power because the industry is lucrative, the parts are not limited? Can someone give me an example of that?
I would say in my industry, I do fashion, style, and fulfillment television.
Yeah.
There are so many costumers out there. So basically, the production company has their pick of who they want to hire um, to do whatever it is they need to do. Is that along the same lines?
Yeah. So essentially, that means that the supplier, so the supplier who's supplying the, I'm assuming it's people, it's manpower, performers, or is it costumes?
Costume. So basically, when reading the script, if I'm supplying a certain type of vest and this vest is readily available because I'm buying it from the Bay, they can hire anybody to basically who's in this job function to do so.
You hit the nail right on the head, and I'm glad that you phrased it that way. Is that Desiree again?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, awesome. No, perfect. I'm getting familiar with your voice now. That's good. So Desiree, you hit the nail on the head there. She helped us out. So power of suppliers, in that case, perfect example of a time where supplier power has been weakened, right? So as the supplier, if you're supplying costumes and that, you kind of have to succumb to the buyer, right? The business, which is right in the middle of all of this. You have to succumb. You don't have much power because what it is that you're providing, it's far and few in between. Right? So that's the opposite, perfect example. So we want to just keep these things in mind and keep in mind what's good and what's bad for different industries. So the reason we stay organized with Porter's Five Forces and we'll take our time and comb through it is because depending on your business and then depending on what industry you're in, this is going to be very personalized and you tailored in a unique way, right? Because for one person, it might be better if suppliers do have more bargaining power, maybe than their customers. And then for another industry, that might not be such a good thing, right? So we just want to make sure we're aware of our positioning and that kind of stuff and fully understanding. Exactly. So, Desiree, we spoke about that last week in part one, which is basically staying unique or creating competitive advantage in one of two ways, either through price or through product diversity or product uniqueness at that, right? So Apple has done a great job of personalizing or allowing people to believe that their products are really, really, really custom. So even though we think it's expensive, it's not, most of us succumb to Apple's products. They're pretty reasonably priced, and we go that way because we feel as if their products are personalized. So those are small things to create competitive advantage. And then next we'll move on, potential to new entrants, potential of new entrants, potential to new entrants, barriers to entry. This is often called sometimes. And then you guys give me the rundown. Have we ever heard of this? Barriers to entry. Is anyone familiar with that? Barriers to entry. And remember, go ahead. You can either come off mute or type in the chat if you want to make a comment. Have we heard of barriers to entry?
I would say yes.
Yeah.
An example of that would be if you provide natural health products, you need to have an NPN number or an HP number in order to do that where it's valid by Health Canada. So
Perfect. Perfect. That's perfect. Typically, we're going to pause actually. Those are barriers to entry, and potential of new entrants speaks to whether or not this is easy. Is it easy for people to get into the industry or is it not? So just as Desiree mentioned to us, there are things, I see your hand there, Tombra, and we'll get to that in a moment. There are things like licensing or maybe credentials, these kinds of things, depending on what industry that you're in, that are considered barriers to entry. So things that make it more difficult to get into that industry. If you're in the liquor industry, you're going to have certain licenses and legalities that you have to deal with, policies that you have to succumb to. It's going to be a little bit more difficult, right? Exactly. So as Morley's saying to us right now, it can impede new entries to the market. And that's what potential of new entrants or barriers to entry or whatever that category ends up being titled. As I said, they're interchangeable titles. That's what it addresses though. Legalities, policies, sometimes the big players, the major players that are dominating that industry, right? Is there any monopolies, anything like that? So right now, as I mentioned, we've got, depending on the industry, barriers to entry, low entry barriers equals a high degree of competition. So this is understanding that when it comes to potential of new entrants or barriers to entry, low entry barriers, so the less barriers you have, less policies, less licensing, less difficult it is for companies to enter into that industry, then the more competition that industry is going to have. Tombra, go ahead. You can come off mute. I know you had a question there.
No, hi. It wasn't a question. I was just going to state that I guess for me, it was gonna be like a simplistic definition. I was going to say it's basically like something that would hinder or prevent like a newcomer from entering a market or an industry, and that in turn, would limit competition.
Precisely, right? So the juxtaposition to what we have on the screen, the more barriers there are to entry, then the less potential there are of new entrants. So thank you for that comment as well. It literally just dresses up what we're talking about, which is the understanding of either barriers to entry, potential of new entrants, and how that affects competition. Do we get that right now?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's so I was watching the television the other day around, how the TTC telecommunication. And it seems to me certain of the big companies control, so they have to go through them to get their cellular phone, and the government had to intercede and say something like, you better get together and work it out,
Yeah.
because some of our companies here control a monopoly. So
Yeah. And thank you for bringing up that word monopoly. It's a word that we think only appears in movies sometimes, right? But this is a real term used in economical and financial studies. It is true. There are major companies that we can think of right now that control various industries, right? Whether legal or illegal. As our brother said here, the television that he was watching, right? Sometimes we're able to see these things straightforward and sometimes we're not. So oftentimes in industries, it will appear on paper that it's an equal industry, fairly fit, there shouldn't be any monopolies or anything like that, but you can clearly identify that there are major leading players that it seems like everyone kind of has to check in with and or get the go around from before they can proceed, right? So we could think of some industries like this, banking, even when we think of confection and food, Kellogg's, Kraft, P&G, like these kind of things, right? So it's real, monopolization is real. And when you're entering industries, it's really important to think about that. A lot of people enter, let's say, industries like finance, right? And they really haven't studied their competition, maybe thinking, oh, I'm a sole proprietor or something like that. I don't need to look at Edward and Jones. It's a really big mistake, right? Because as an individual, you kind of have to almost think you're at a disadvantage when you're entering some of these industries that have renowned and previously established reputations. So it's really important. I know I've got people in here in hospitality. I've got people here in digitization and media. I've got people in here in tech. Sorry for anyone who I'm forgetting, aesthetics, all of that. And with that being said, you definitely want to get into these industries and you want to analyze the bigger players that are already in place, whether you're a small business owner or not, because there's a reason that they are where they are. And then there's also an aspect of consumer trust, consumer relationship. And then as we're talking about right now, the threat of new entrants, right? The people who are monopolizing these industries, they see you as a threat, whether you're thinking you're competing with them or not. So we want to bear that in mind. Okay, and then let's go on. We got availability of substitutes. Okay, does anybody know anything about availability of substitutes? This is kind of my favorite side of the forces, the substitutes in the competition. Do we know anything about availability of substitutes? And like we're saying, we're shooting our shot. It's the best way to retain and remember information is to shoot your shot and to stand corrected. That's the way
yeah.
to remember everything. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
So like my business, I do board games.
Mm-hmm.
And as I said before, I go straight to the continent to do my games, and I get it from Ghana, sometime Togo. But then I realize now that, as I do the research, you realize people can get them generic made
Mm-hmm.
for like I don't know, for really less money.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
so now I have to figure out how do I make sure people buy mine versus the substitute, because the substitute is real cheap
Mm-hmm.
and mine have certain values, so I have to focus on my value added proposition rather than the $5.99 one.
Yeah, exactly. Precisely. And great example too. For our definition, what we've got here before we dive into things is that it depends on the industry's competitive structure. So it's more intense if there's many small competitors and there are high fixed costs that way, high exit barriers, and similar products. So these are things that will make the availability of substitutes. If this is high, these are things that will make your company's ability to flourish slightly more difficult, or things you have to strategize against. So as it was just mentioned with the board games and that, now you become aware, because not all of this is employed. Typically, industry analysis is something that is regularly conducted because the market changes, right? So not all of these things can always be employed right at the beginning. Maybe we started this out, it was a lucrative idea. Halfway down the line, we realized, oh, shoot, everyone's selling this product for like 1/4 of the price. What am I going to do? Right now, the availability of substitutes has increased. Later on, we'll go over more strategies and ways that you can get innovative as a business owner and not just kind of throw away your idea and all your dreams or anything like that when these kind of things do happen, because they do happen, and they even happen to some of the larger companies, right? That we can think about, that come to mind, whether that's in telecommunications, whether that's again in tech, hospitality, entertainment, whatever the case may be. We can definitely recall there are times where competition or substitute products uprise, and we see some companies completely disappear, like Cheese Whiz, and then we see other companies flourish and thrive, like Apple or TD, et cetera, et cetera. So that covers the availability of substitutes. Is that straightforward to everybody? I know typically it is. It's like Vaseline versus lotion, body butter versus natural moisturizer, shea butter, these kind of things. So it's understanding what other products could replace your product or what people could use instead. If you make a soft drink, people could still drink water, juice, coffee. These are all substitutes. Do we get that? Let me get some numbers in the chat. We have a bit of crickets for me here today. Okay, perfect. So we get that. Awesome. Awesome, awesome, awesome. And does anybody else have a substitute hitch or hindrance right now that they're going to want to go over later? How is that in your businesses? Are we dealing? I know we're dealing with the availability of substitutes heavy right now. When the economy gets difficult, everyone gets innovative. So how is everyone's business or professionals, how are we doing with the availability of substitutes right now? We will touch more on it later as well. And you can come off mute or speak in the chat. Is the availability of substitutes affecting your business or affecting your profession?
Hi, I'm in photography.
Yeah.
I've been doing photography independently for 4 years, and I would say that the threat of substitute within my company is AI. So I've been having to this year do a lot of research about AI and how it affects my company because, for one, like I think something that people would accept is when I would say like, oh, I only do a certain type of level of editing. But now, because of AI, editing has gotten a lot cheaper. And so now I have had to consider investing in it because a lot of other photographers are investing in it because of the price going down in when you're doing it third party.
Yeah.
So that's one way. And also now photo booths as well. So I've also been exploring photo booths because that's another replacement that people or substitute that people are considering as well for their events.
Exactly. Yeah. And who was that? And I know you said you're into photography for the last 4 years. Can I get your name?
My name is Kanika, and I'm the owner of Key Moments Photography.
Awesome. Thank you. Nice to meet you, Kanika. And I'm glad that you brought that up. That actually leads me into my next point, which is complementary products. So that is the #1 solution to availability of substitutes. And thank you for saying that and for sharing that with the other entrepreneurs and professionals in the chat. Right? The way you solve the availability or the threat of substitute products is adding complementary products. And I see your hand there, Morley. I'm going to get to you right after this statement. So that is what is counterintuitive to that issue. That solves that problem every single time. If you have threats of substitutes in whatever industry you're in, you want to consider, begin to innovate what product can complement a product that you already have. That kind of shoots your uniqueness and your competitive advantage out the window, because now, even if there's 10 other people that offered what you had, once you add that other product, you've now re-isolated or re-separated yourself to be in your own lane again, right? In some sort of way, even if it's something small. So just like we heard Kanika, if I'm correct, just tell us about her photography and that kind of stuff. AI's coming in. That was a perfect story for us to analyze. AI's coming in, threat of a substitute to her business and editing in that as a photographer. She's going to go ahead. She's going to learn about her enemy, right? That's #1. Learn the most you can about your enemy or whatever is threatening you so that she can conquer. And that's in the art of war. And then next to that, she's going to make sure she has something else that she can offer that creates even more of an advantage for her business, which is where she implemented the photo booth. So now not only is she taking pictures and having that service of editing, but hey, she's got something else to offer her audience too. So it's not the same as just being able to replace it with a little AI photo editor. She's added an experience to her photography as well, right? So that is something she can scale up for her time. Hopefully that was helpful. Morley, I know you had a question. You can go ahead and take yourself off mute.
Okay. In my case, it's organic juices, and I can't have substitutes really, because once you, for example, if I'm going to be purchasing a ready-made material to add to that, it changes the whole dynamics of wholesome organic. So
Yes,
how do you address that situation?
for sure. Yeah. So just that wouldn't necessarily, let's say, be the way that you might introduce like a complementary product. So the threat of a substitute is more other companies that are also competitors to your organic juice companies. And directly, that might be other organic juice companies, but it's also going to be anybody else that's in kind of like that health and wellness field of organic products, organic fruits, even if they're not pureed yet and turned into juice or a different type of meal, anything in that industry. So with that being said, when we talk about creating a complementary product, that's going to be anything that complements your juice. First thing that comes to mind here for me is glass. When you think about wellness, sustainability, stuff like that, plastic is a no-go. Glass is a yes, yes to that audience, to that target, to that industry. And then I would put a price on it. If you sell your stuff in plastic, get some sort of reusable, if it's not glass that you want to use, or a tumbler or something like that, that people can maybe use to have your juice mobile. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you can be buying our juices and stuff like that, but here's this like cool little pop tab type of tumbler that you now can bring around our juices in. And then further to that, now you scale it up even more and say, okay, now we're offering liter size or 2 liter size. So now you buy the 2 liter size and you have to get the individual sized cup to have your whole little organic vibe here, that you're supporting your body, supporting the world and sustainability. And that's just kind of off the top for me.
I do also have a suggestion, because I'm not in that field, but I do consume it.
Go
And a
ahead.
lot of what I would say is what I love about other some organic companies versus others is that some give a guide, and they will tell you, oh, if you use this juice for 5 days, you'll see a cleanse in this way, and giving people guidance and more information about why they should use this juice on a longer term and the benefits of it, so that they know, oh, if I use this juice, it'll clean my kidneys. If I use this juice, it'll clean my liver. And
Exactly.
that information is very valuable.
Exactly. And that was Desiree, right? Am I right?
That was Kanika.
Kanika. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm getting there with the voices. So sorry about that. Thank you, Kanika. Exactly. These are things that you can add, little nutrition facts, right? When we analyze, let's say, the economy, the market, why do we really think that the government started adding nutrition facts or put regulation in for nutrition facts to be included in like food and that kind of stuff? Do we think it was for us? I'll just answer that rhetorical question. No, it wasn't. Oh, sorry. Don't go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing. It's
Yeah,
for the government.
exactly. Yeah, it's money. It's a money grab, right? People are now more interested in knowing what's in their products before they buy them. So we've got to succumb to the consumer and provide them this information. So exactly the suggestion Kanika just gave as well, that could build on. And I think maybe you got about three little projects there, Morley, to give a try and to employ with your organic business. Even I would like to see it. I consume a lot of organic juices and that kind of stuff too. But yeah, a few suggestions there. You can provide those nutrition facts. I also have a friend, he's a personal trainer, but he partners up with an organic, they make smoothies and that kind of stuff, protein, more so heavier stuff. He partners up with them, but they create a lot of like reels and that kind of stuff about specifically what the different fruits that they're putting in are doing. So just as Kanika mentioned, knowing this is good for your colon or your gut, like that kind of little nitty gritty stuff invaluable, because when people are consuming these things, we want to feel like, oh, today I'm kind of like 1/5 closer to having a cleaner colon. Like, you want to think that, right? Even if it's not working that way, and that sells. Okay. Next.
Thank you so much.
Good. Okay.
Very valuable.
Good. Perfect. I'm happy. Awesome. Alicia, let us know. Good. Okay, good. I'm happy with the feedback, guys. Make sure you're good to post questions and all that. Aaliyah's monitoring the chat. So even if I'm not on that topic, don't forget your questions and comments, post them in the chat, and then we'll get to them as well. So we've got competition in the industry, and sometimes this can be called threat of competition, industry competition, so on and so forth. So as we mentioned, and we know, names are toggleable. So if there's a small number of customers, then the room for price differentiation is less. So do we understand this concept? If there's a small amount of consumers in that industry, so not a lot of people are consuming from that industry, then there's less power of pricing. Do we understand this?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. A major question that I get all the time, and it was one of my questions as well when understanding business, it's kind of like the elephant in the room type of question, is how come everything is just about like pricing or competitive advantage or like being unique? That is what business is about. So if you want to check out the Jobs, the Warren Buffetts, the Tyler Perrys, the Oprahs, black, white, in between, successful in general, that's what everything's about. You compete in two ways. Either you can offer a lower price or you can offer a better product. Sometimes as business owners, we make the mistake of kind of, we're creators. So we get into, hopefully you guys can still hear me. Sorry, a call just interrupted us. We get into a little bit of a vibe where we kind of just follow our innovation and follow our creativity. And we think that automatically a good idea is just a profitable idea. And that's the idea. Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Marley. And that's the idea of the starving artist. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that paradox, right? It's the idea of the starving artist. So you think that because you're producing great art, that makes it valuable to consumers, and it doesn't. So as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, we never want to get kind of stuck in a box of what our mission is. If you're kind of focused on your own mission and self-fulfillment, then it's called a hobby. When you're focused on profitability and making money and actually scale, then it's a business. So that's the main thing. Even the government's idea of when business is defined or business activities are defined, they use the scale of effort put in to generate money. That is the definition of what makes something business. Okay, so we want to make sure that we don't turn off. I know once again, and for me as well, you don't want to go too far outside of the boundaries. You don't have to be of it to understand it and to compete in it. So it doesn't necessarily mean we're succumbing to everything or succumbing to the system or the boxes that are put in place. It means we understand them as business owners so that we can manipulate the market, right? So we understand, Sakshi, you could go ahead with the competition in the industry point. We understand that if this industry has a small number of customers, small number of consumers, then it's going to be more difficult for you as the business owner to have pricing power. So if there's less customers, if the industry or if the market is smaller, less saturated, there's less room for you to go in and be like, oh, okay, I'm going to take $5 off and charge $5 less, right? You're undercutting there. And then there's also less room for you to charge a lot more and be like, oh, I'm charging $10 more, because there's not many consumers in the industry to begin with. So your business probably won't be lucrative based on price. Does everybody understand that? I know there's going to be like a bunch of questions around that. Does that make sense to everyone? Good. Aaliyah and everyone else is probably still just kind of wrapping their head around that. Does that make sense? Does the competition in the industry in terms of that's either pricing or product differentiation? You guys let me know. Good. Okay. So Andrew's saying you got it. Good. Perfect. Perfect. Okay. Okay, good. Good. So can you guys give me an example of an industry where there's tons of customers, so there's room for business owners and professionals to set their price where they want to? Give me an example where there's room for that pricing competition, an industry where there's tons of customers, it's lucrative. Even if everyone's charging $30, you could come in with a good product, charge 50, people are gonna buy. Give me an example of an industry that's like that. A big one comes to mind right now. Yeah,
I
go
would say I'm in the holistic industry. I'm a registered herbalist.
ahead. Okay.
So a lot of the points that you're touching on are points that I'm able to do. I can price where I need to because of the competition.
Mhm.
And the industry is in Canada, $28 billion industry.
Ooh. Ooh. In the right field. Who is that? Who was that talking to us this morning? Do you want to introduce yourself and your business?
Yeah, sure. I am
You
the
were
founder and inventor
breaking up
of
for me there.
Elemental Notes.
You're breaking up for us there. Can you start over?
Okay, I think my reception's bad.
No worries.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, we got
Can
you
you hear me
now.
now?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. I'm Nairobi. I'm the founder and inventor of Elemental Notes. We are a natural health solution and holistic education company. We provide holistic seminars, breathwork consultations, and specialized and customized products based on the unique needs of each individual. We have an e-commerce store, and I'm one of 2 registered herbalists of Afro-Caribbean descent in Ontario.
Nice. I love that for you. It sounds like you've done your industry research too. I'm one of those people that would have had my blinders on. I had no idea that the holistic and natural industry was such a lucrative industry. But it only makes sense. I feel like once you hit a point of execution and professionalism as well, you're kind of willing to pay almost any price, right? Even this year, what I'm looking into is more of a wellness retreat or something of that sort, even for my birthday, detox, all of that. So it makes sense once you do get to that, you could probably really tap into the higher pockets of society, really being in that field. I think it's very, very smart for you ladies that are in the holistic and the natural path fields. Shout
Thank
out
you.
to you guys. Yeah.
Well, we can talk if you need some support with that, with your birthday.
Oh yeah, I love making connections in here. We will definitely talk. Right now, close by me, I support, and pricing doesn't really matter to me. It's all about value of product. Right now I support Body Belief. So I don't know if you've heard of them. They're in the GTA. And they make natural products. I've always been like a just water on my face kind of girl, but they have a 4-product moisturizer. It's like lemon, shea butter, something else whipped up. So I'm sure you're familiar with kind of that type of stuff. But yeah, like I'm down to support. It's definitely $70 a jar, but I'll support. Like if it works, if I like how it feels and it does good things for me, I can wear it. My daughter can wear it. Those are the kind of things I care about. So yeah, for sure. Hopefully we can be in touch.
Yeah, let's set up a call when we're off this.
Okay, let's do it. So next we've got, and that everybody's good. Competition in the industry, we get where that comes from. It's either differentiation or it's price. We get that the less consumers, the less saturated it is in that industry, the less pricing power that you have, the more you're going to want to make yourself stand out by being unique. And then if there's lots of competition, then the more you can use price to compete, right? If the industry is lucrative, I see here telecommunications, Amazon, this kind of stuff. What came to my mind was tech. So with the telecommunications under that umbrella, tech came to my mind as well. So there's competition in that industry, but there's lots of buyers. So let's say, for example, it's really easy for somebody to come in at a price point that's just a couple dollars less and gain a huge amount of market share, right? Because the industry is so lucrative, there's so many customers for that shift to have an impact. Good to go. Power of buyers, and similar to where we started, this could also be changed to bargaining power of buyers, influence of buyers, or power of consumer, influence of consumer, market influence of consumer, interchangeable. Point is, how much power does the people who are purchasing your product have to influence the price of that product most specifically, or other aspects of the product? Okay, so demand for your products will decline if substitutes are available. So does that make sense? I use as examples instead of definitions for you guys today, because I feel like that puts everything more into perspective. Once you think about that, then it's like, oh, okay, I get what this means. So demand for product will decline if more substitutes are available. Does everyone understand what that means? Can someone either type in the chat or come off mute, explain to me what that kind of means to you and if that makes sense? Do you get that? Demand for products will decline if substitutes are available.
If there's another option that may be cheaper, more easily accessible, or have other components to being received by the customer that yours doesn't, you're easily replaceable.
Exactly. Simple, right? Pretty straightforward. So how does this relate to the buyers? Easy. Your consumer's the one who decides that. So as we could see for the Porter's 5 forces, the most difficult part is that that's where you take your entrepreneurship hat off and you have to sit in each of these different spaces. You have to sit in a supplier headspace, sit in a buyer headspace, so on and so forth, to analyze each part. That's why this framework is so effective, is because you don't think power of buyers. You don't come in from the top down, from a managerial or from a CEO way of thinking. You literally have to put yourself in the buyer's shoes to think of how consumers are perceiving this area of business, because most consumers don't perceive business the way that business owners, employers, managers, CEOs perceive business, right? So the power of the buyer is all about, why am I going to buy this? When you're shopping, why would I buy this when I could get that? Why would I do this when I could get that? Opportunity costs. That's what we're always doing. We're always weighing why one decision over another. So with your product or with your service, you kind of want to make sure you've pre-answered that question, right? You've already got that question answered for the customer. So what comes to mind for me is, we all know the Everest College commercial from back in the day, right? You spend all day on the phone anyhow. So we all know that commercial. We could probably recite the entire thing. He talks, but he answers every question: fees, tuition, why it's easy, what you're doing right now, why you could do this right now, right? So the more specific you could get, and then it also ties into what Kanika mentioned earlier, which is the instructions. The average person doesn't like to innovate, doesn't like to make decisions, because it takes energy, right? Jeff Bezos tells us that decision making, it takes energy. So if you can provide this already sorted out, already thought of, I'll tell you why you want my product, instead of specifically this guy, this guy, this guy's product, you've probably increased your chances per sale by at least. The power of buyers is the most important place to analyze for any business owner, consumer. Who's going to consume your product? What are they thinking? What do they want to know? What do you need to tell them so that they don't have to think about it? And if you could beat your, whether that's leads, customers, consumers, if you could beat them to answering those questions, what happens to the mind is it just thinks, oh, that question already got answered, and it doesn't ponder the response. But if people leave you, whether that's a product, your store, online, make a sale, if they leave you and they feel like, oh, shoot, like, I don't really have an answer to that, or there's a lot of things they don't know, that's when you get into the buyer's remorse, right? And that's another subject, but we study that as well as entrepreneurs. That's something we don't want. And Anam, I could see you have your hand raised. Go ahead there.
Yeah, no, I was, even when one has a business, one has to think, who do you really want to sell it to? And I guess your idea around target market, right? And I made a conscious choice to go business to business rather than business to consumer. Because when I sell my products to business, they have unlimited resources. They get, because it's an educational resource. So they get funded to buy these things to support their students, all students, right? And then if I wanted to go to just the regular people, for me it would that would take too much time. So I decided I want to focus on business to business because they have the money to buy, and then I'll do that secondary market to the consumer itself.
Yeah. And that is a strategy. That's a very employable strategy. There's a ton of industries where that option should also be analyzed, right? Contractual B2B business, primarily, and then using the customer segment as the secondary market. So that's also part of a decision to make is, are you going to do B2B business, and what is going to be your primary market? Are you targeting the consumer first, or are you targeting your other businesses primarily as well? And they could also both have different buying power, as you just mentioned, right? So those who are entering contractually, maybe it's schools or programs or whatever the case may be, are going to have different bargaining power than just the individualized consumer, right? So those are all like things that you could strategize as well. Is everyone comfortable with the Porter's 5 forces? How are we feeling? Good? Yeah? Okay. So we like the Porter's 5 forces. I'm about to leave it alone. So if there are any questions or anything, awesome. Can you guys see your thumbs up? If there's any more questions about Porter's until we come back, speak now or forever hold your peace. Awesome. Okay, Raquel, I see you. You're good. Okay, good. So let's get the next slide up. So along in the industry analysis, once you've kind of done your Porter's 5 forces, you've looked at your industry, your company, your business as it speaks with your 9 building blocks, where your business fits in the industry that you're getting into. You've kind of, first you've done the micro, you did your business, analyzed it, studied it. Now you did a bit of the macro, you're kind of working your way out towards the outer of the shell there so that you've got the whole project complete, right? First, the foundation. We take Porter's and we look at our industry life cycle. Okay, so now we kind of have all the foundation. We've got our building blocks for our company. We've got our Porter's 5 forces analysis. So we know what's up with our company. We know what our mission is. We know what our vision is. We know what's up with the industry. We know what's going on kind of around us. When we get in here, we know how to flex, how to move. But what we don't know still is how the overall economy is going to affect our business. And of course, for some of the longer running, I know some of the startup entrepreneurs are still dealing with startup issues, but I know for some of the longer running entrepreneurs and professionals, we can definitely attest to experiencing how those macro market changes influence our business on a smaller scale. So before I even get into this, in my company, business to consumer pays more than B2B price point. Yeah, exactly. And Morley, you will find that, right? Because your product is focused on, sorry to jump back and forth here, guys. I'm just going to attack Morley's question. She said, in my company, business to consumer pays more than B2B price point, right? So literally flip the other way around. But that also doesn't surprise me, because the fact that you're in like wellness and self-care means that it's more likely that a person is going to pay more money to invest in themselves than it is that there's like institutions that are going to pay more for quality juice when they could buy like a Minute Maid or something and just give that to their employees for free. So definitely. And that's why I say with the Porters, it's really, really critical to make sure you're doing your own analysis. Don't think I'm starting a t-shirt company, my friend's starting a t-shirt company. So that means that whatever his analysis looks like is what my analysis would look like. His threat of competition is my threat of competition. Don't do that, right? You want to individualize. If you're thinking of if you've got a business or if you've got a business idea you're looking to execute, you want to make sure that that analysis is as individualized as possible. Okay. So pushing back forward, like I said, we also make sure that we analyze how the overall market, the market trends, and the things that happen in the economy that we don't really have any control over, can't really predict in any form, how those things are going to affect our business, affect our industry, and affect our ability to make sales, to retain customers, so on and so forth, right? Affect those 9 building blocks of business. Let's get to the next. Oh, no, we'll stay here. Actually, you can go back for a second. The industry life cycle looks like this, the chart that you guys can see right now. I apologize, I stepped away. It typically analyzes demand over time. Okay. If this graph is not making sense, I know everyone is not going to be mathematically or financially inclined. It's good to ask questions along the way. Is this graph making sense to everybody? Does this chart make sense? Let me get some thumbs up.
Can you explain a little bit on what
Oh,
embryonic mean?
Yeah, we're going to go into detail about everything. I just want to make sure that everyone understands the way the
Good.
graph appears in terms of demand.
Oh yeah, got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
good. Okay, good. No, that was a good question. Okay, so let's go on to the other slide so I can get into detail here. Okay, so we can see it a little bit bigger. We've got embryonic, growth, shakeout, mature, and decline. Okay, so what do we think that each of these titles mean? I try to start with questions because I want to know what you guys are thinking, and correction stays in the mind better than information.
Is
So,
that like at the I could be wrong, but like would that be like the idea phase, like before it's birthed? I'm not sure.
yeah, so yeah, it's the seeded phase. So a business that's in the embryonic phase is in a seeded phase, right? They're at the very, very beginning, probably still in ideation. They've yet to launch, that kind of, right? Embryonic. Do we understand that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, then we get into the growth phase. So the growth phase is kind of where a business is now starting to, it hasn't bloomed yet. We won't say bloomed, but we'll say it's beginning to emerge. So the way we'll go through this kind of life cycle, we'll think of it kind of like a plant. Embryonic, we know the seed's there, the seed's been planted, it's in the ground, we put the soil over, soil's good. It's got all its nutrients. We know something's coming. Okay, we put everything we need to put in it. We know something's coming. That's embryonic. Growth phase, we've got a little sprout coming up from the dirt, right? Sprouts coming up. This is looking good. The plant's going to come through. We know the seeds, like everything's been done right because the process has started. We're good to go, right? Then we get to shakeout. We're like, okay, the plant's starting to grow now. It's getting tall. Looks like those flowers are coming. They're ready to bud, but they're not budding. The flowers haven't budded. We just see bulbs now, that kind of thing. That's it, right? Plants growing up, bulbs are coming. We know the flowers are coming, but they haven't. It's deeper than the growth phase because the plant is now starting to show, but we still haven't gotten any flowers, right? That's where we are in shakeout. Then we get to the mature phase. The mature phase is where now we're going to start to see flowers. We're going to see the buds. We see all the petals. Everything looks pretty. We can see all the colors. People can come. They can pick from these flowers, grab a whole bouquet. The garden looks great. It's blossoming right now, right? Amazing. But obviously we know what follows that subsequently is, of course, a decline. The only place to go from the top is down. Now, any of these phases can last very long. Let's say Amazon, Apple, right now, they're still in, oh, well, I'm giving you guys a little bit of an answer to our activity, but they're still in the mature phases. Or some of these companies arguably are in their shakeout phases, whatever the case may be, right? And they're just kind of in that phase and they're riding the wave. They're not on a decline as yet. Nonetheless, that will inevitably happen one way or another. So what we're going to start with first is, before I even get into the activity, I'm going to give you guys an opportunity with some thought to give me an example of a company that fits into each of these phases. So I'm going to start with embryonic, and somebody can give me an example of a company or an industry, I should say, an industry that is in its embryonic phase. What industry is in an embryonic phase? So when we think about that and put it into perspective, that means the industry has been planted. This could be maybe something that's being talked about, something that we know is underway. What industry can you guys give me that is in an embryonic phase?
Could we say AI, or maybe that would be the growth stage? I'm unsure, or in between. I don't know.
Okay, I like that one. I like AI in, I feel like tech overall might be somewhere like growth shakeouty, but I like AI being an embryonic as well, especially to us. I think there's probably different people at different levels that have various ideas and understanding of how developed AI is, but I definitely think to us it's in its embryonic phase as well. Yeah. What about growth? Where would we put, what industry would we put in the growth category?
Chanel, we have aviation, Tesla there.
Perfect. Okay. Tesla.
therapy.
Tesla Aviation. Tesla. Somebody tell me about this. Is this Tesla? Tell me about this. Gene therapy, Andrew. Yeah.
Space tourism.
I think it might be Tesla actually, because I actually work in that industry right now, and we have Tesla for aviation, which we just released in the aerospace engineering.
Oh, wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay, so we're looking at aviation, Tesla Aviation. Andrew says gene therapy. Andrew, what is gene therapy? Tell me about this.
Oh, morning, everybody. Well, there's now there, for example, the latest is that sickle cell is now there's a therapy for sickle cell. It's very expensive, of course, and there's a lot of other therapies for different diseases or conditions that were basically untreatable or uncurable. So now they're using the genes and they're kind of splicing and modifying genes to cure diseases that that are kind of uncurable.
Wow, very extremely intriguing. That's amazing. Okay, let's go from growth. We're at shakeout. Aaliyah, if you can just go through shakeout, mature, and decline until I get back, you'll probably only get through shakeout. I've just got to grab my charger, my laptop charger.
Let me just see your screen for a second. Give me a moment.
Yeah. Okay, guys, give me 30 seconds. Let me grab my laptop charger for the segment. I will be right back. And Aaliyah's going to take you through shakeout. So go ahead and let myself and everybody else know what your ideas are about industries that are in the shakeout phase. Aaliyah, are you good to go there?
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Good to hear me. Do we have anything in the chat for examples of shakeout here? I know the last comment I seen was for gene therapy, which was for our last phase. Anybody have any ideas of shakeout? Okay, I see Stella has something. Okay, hi Stella.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Hi, can you hear me now? Hi, my name is Stella. I'm a designer here in the city of Burlington. I'm a very outgoing individual who has her own business.
Okay.
How are you today?
I'm not too bad. How are you, Stella?
Well, you're living the dream. It's March break. Anybody have any plans?
Right now, in terms of plans, we're actually talking about the example of a shakeout in the industry life cycle. Do you have any examples of what you
Explain shakeout. I've never heard that term before.
Okay, sorry, Chanel is back. Give me one moment. Chanel, we just had Stella join in and she just wanted an overview of what shakeout is so she could provide an example.
Hi, awesome. Okay, yeah, no, we will go back through each of the categories as soon as we just jump through and grab some examples from just everyone who's already been here about each category so far, and then I will go back and recap each one afterwards. So let's get first a suggestion of an example of an industry that's in the shakeout phase.
We had Andrew put in electric vehicles, by the way.
Okay, perfect.
I would say groceries. The banks are going to the shakeout.
Okay, give me 1 sec. Everybody go on mute for 30 seconds, and then I'm gonna facilitate a little bit. So first, Andrew's gonna go ahead. Go ahead, Andrew.
Well, so the electric vehicles, they're kind of growing. While they've grown, there's kind of a lot of people are using them. However, they're still trying to figure out the technology, range, battery life. So, but by all means, it's kind of still working its way out, but it's on its way up.
Okay. And so do we want to put electric vehicles in shakeout? Do we want to put it there?
I don't know. I mean, it's somewhere between growth and shakeout, I guess.
Okay.
But,
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree. I would agree because you feel like it's been planted already. It's kind of beginning to sprout, but it's more iterate type of phase, iteration.
The range is really an issue, and they don't have like gas stations. They don't have them all over the place.
Exactly.
So there's still, there's still some infrastructure work that has to be done. So but it's definitely not going away, and it
Okay.
is growing in popularity.
All right.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. And then next we have Stella, you can go ahead. I know you were waiting. You were speaking when I came back.
Okay, hold on. Okay, hold on. I have to go back. Okay. Yes, so I would say the banking environment right now, I think banks are going through a shakeout.
Okay. Okay.
They're downsizing on employees and more machines, just like the grocery stores.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Okay. And then let's go mature. What are we saying is in the mature phase? Morley, hand up. Sorry about that, guys. Morley, hand up. Tombra, Morley, before I let you go, I'm going to let Tombra go. That I saw that hand first. Sorry about that.
So for mature?
Yeah. Was that you had a hand up from before? Was it about the chart or was it about something else?
Oh no, I was still going through the chart.
Still going
I
through the
have an
chart.
example for shakeout, but I can also go for mature.
No, go
So
ahead
like
for shakeout. Go.
for shakeout, I was gonna say the ride sharing industry. I feel like it's experiencing a lot of like consolidation, and then also in terms of like because there's more competition, the dominance for the stronger ones are also showing as well too. And then for mature, I would say probably like the automotive industry because it's very much like secure and they've been established for a very long time as well too.
Nice, nice. I like those as well. Thank you for that. Kanika says here, fitness for mature as well. Okay, let me grab Morley was the last 10 I saw there from, I think
Yeah.
that's it. Okay, go
What
ahead, Morley.
I'm going with AI because it started with AI, right? And I'm looking at the world's first automotive AI restaurant, powered restaurant in Southern California, which is in Pasadena. And that AI is robot. It cooks the burgers and deep fry French fries at this particular restaurant. So you see the beginning phase there that it moves into all the stages and now it's mature. That's the
Mature.
first AI restaurant in the world.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then I heard somebody go ahead, Aaliyah. Yeah, jump in.
I wanted to mention actually pharmaceuticals because I feel like they fit in mature because they've been well established for years, but I feel like they also can fit everything, including shakeout and growth and embryonic because they're honestly constantly developing new products in the field. And then for growth, they're growing in terms of how many things they add to their environment. So I'm not sure where exactly, but I think it could be immature because it's been well established for a while.
Yeah, pharmaceuticals would definitely fall into mature. The nice thing that you said in terms of like overlapping, and I'm glad you brought this up because it's good to think about this on this scale. This is not a scale similar to like our other diagrams or quadrants where you want to be confused about where you fall. The industry life cycle is something you want to be so clear about, whether that's gathering research, listening to the news, watch some Warren Buffett clips on his opinion of the industry that you're in or whatever the case may be. You don't want to get this wrong and you don't want to be in more than one category either. It very easily influences your business decisions without noticing or not by misinterpreting what part of this cycle that you fall into, right? So what we want to remember. Sorry about that, guys, just a call. What we want to remember is how it would affect you. Remember when we were going over Porter's 5 forces, one of the things that I made sure I analyzed in definition instead of putting the blend confusing definitions out was making sure I used examples so that we could understand how a change in this would affect a change in that. So with that being said, same thing with the industry life cycle. We want to make sure we understand that a change in this is going to affect a change in that. And if you happen to be mistaking that your company is in the wrong industry phase, it's going to affect the business decisions that you make. And more likely than not, you're probably going to make incorrect ones. So I say that to say this: if I think my company is in the shakeout phase, but it's really in the embryonic phase, I'm going to have a big problem, right? I'm sure we can all see it's pretty straightforward how that's going to be a big issue, because if I'm in the embryonic phase, I'm really focused on innovation, ideation, getting my ideas out. I'm also going to be open to the fact at that time that there's going to be a lot of trash, right? There's going to be a lot of things to go in the garbage. I'm still deciphering, still discerning, still distinguishing. And then I haven't even hit the phase of kind of putting out an MVP, minimum viable product, and iterating. I haven't even hit that yet. So if I think I'm in shakeout, but I'm really in embryonic, I'm going to have a problem, and vice versa. Right? So we want to make sure that we know exactly where the company, our business, or even as professionals, what industry we fall in, and then where in the industry life cycle. So besides the analysis of the industry itself, where in the industry life cycle does that industry fall? Because even though it's such a macro analysis, it really underlining affects that very first decision that you'll make, maybe going into the next quarter or whatever the case may be, by placing or thinking that your business is in the wrong point of its life cycle, right? Aaliyah, I know I got to your question. Before I get into the nitty gritty and the examples of this, do we have any more questions regarding the life cycle?
Yes, yeah. Some of it becomes very complex. I guess all of us who are considered with high potent of melanin, otherwise Black folks, when we had some type of, I don't know, awakening, or we awakening through Black Lives Matter, DEI, the diversity industry, begin to grow.
Mm-hmm.
But at this juncture, because I'm in that kind of business as well, I wouldn't be across the US, during white supremacy, it has hit a crisis, and the attack on it now, so so it was supposed to be growth. In certain places in America, you can't even say the word, right? So they're banning that in all over America. Supreme Court is striking it down.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to have a global thing. Yet in Canada, it's kind of a different outlook. In Europe, Caribbean, it's a different outlook on it. So sometimes the analysis, you have to step back and do a deeper analysis than just looking at this. Because yeah,
Agreed.
it was going up the other day. I could have made a couple $100 billion in 5 years, but going forward now, I wouldn't be doing that work in America as we speak, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, most definitely. And just to tie things in or bring home what you said, that's why throughout this call, I am trying my best to emphasize to you guys, don't think that you can attack one area of this solely or on its own and then be able to achieve like great results. You gotta look at what we have here. You'll have the videos from the BBPA, and then obviously I'll provide you guys this PowerPoint. Analyze and take in, suck it all up, how things affect each other. Because as it was just mentioned to us by Anum, I'm pretty sure I got that right, as it was just mentioned to us, depending on where you go, if you're scaling your business globally, internationally, these are things you need to consider. If you're scaling your business only on a national level, then you also have to microanalyze just your own nation and how your own nation is different from the trends of the market on a global scale. So what it's all about and what analysis is all about is debunking your preconceptions, your biases, your assumptions, most importantly, and then looking and digging and researching for that truth, right? So hopefully that makes sense to everybody. I'm going to grab some of these comments, and then we're going to go through the industry life cycle example. We're getting to them. We've got about 13 minutes now. So I'm going to go through some of these comments. We're going to wrap up the life cycle and do an activity with some examples. And then following that, we'll do a bit of Q&A and wrap things up, because I know there's tons of probing questions right now and lots of room for discussion so far. So couture images, I think that was Kanika or Desiree, so said to champion what Andrew was saying, political policies trying to phase out gas vehicles and to incentivize, yeah, but the political industry is shaking out older beliefs. Exactly. So what we're seeing, I'm so glad you brought this up without getting into too much politics, is that cycle of politics as well. So that's even a part, and that's if it's up to you. There are people like, it honestly, it all depends on how deep you want to take and how deep you take your company's mission, because even a photographer can still get involved and show their target what their beliefs are, where they stand on certain things. And that can also double down on their audience and their customer retention and so on and so forth. So it all depends on what angle. Some people take more of a hands-off, less personal, product-driven approach to business, and that is also and can be very lucrative as well. However, to address this comment, there are obviously different assumptions made about why it is that the government is looking to incentivize electric cars and take away gas vehicles and in that kind of concept, and then the push of like global warming and the awareness and stuff. We won't go too much into that, but I will address what has been said, which is that idea that I guess electric cars we're looking at as being in the shakeout phase. I would agree with that. And on our next slide, we're going to see that as well, because the electric cars fall into technology and technological development, AI, that kind of stuff is definitely in a phase where we're aware of it, we have it, we're not completely knowledgeable all around, but it's shaking out. It's performing, it's available, people can grab onto it or try to grasp it to be able to create exponential things. Does that make sense? Yeah, good. Okay, good. I'm going to breeze through the rest of the comments. They also see that they want stores, Costco, one-stop shopping. Okay, so we've got Stella here just weighing in on the one-stop shop type of idea. So being able to get multiple things in one space. Even that industry is an industry in itself. The wholesale industry, warehouse industry, like that type of industry is an industry in itself as well. To make room for newer policies, to have a handle on all the embryonic creations and the growth stage. Exactly, yeah. Yeah, and we can touch on that as well. So we're also going to separate immigration is also, okay, so I got most of the comments here. The number one thing that I'm seeing that I just wanted to deter everybody from, Desiree, okay, sorry about that. The number one thing I want to deter everyone from is this confusion of AI, tech, and electric cars. So it's almost like, I used to teach a lot of, let's say, like history and self-awareness, mentorship and that kind of stuff. And people would frequently confuse ethnicity, race, nationality. That is my best way to kind of analyze this. Do not confuse tech, AI, and electric. Like, don't think these are interchangeable. They're not the same, and they're not different on the same ways. And they also don't fall under the same categories. Technology is a vast umbrella. It covers electric cars. It covers computers. It covers coding, like it's an industry. An electric car in itself is a product within an industry. AI, product within an industry. Does that make sense to everybody? AI and electric cars aren't an industry on its own. And I'm clarifying that because we're also going to talk about self-driving cars to wrap up here. And I don't want the two to be confused. Do we get that? Okay, good. Sakshi, let's go with the definition, the bullet points. Don't fill in anything yet. Social media, guys, where would we put social media? Embryonic, growth, shakeout, mature, or declined. Where does social media belong?
Still in the growth phase because they're still coming out with different platforms.
Can we get, can you bring up that point, Sakshi? You can click through as we're getting the answers. No, not all the way. Yeah, so awesome. Social media is in the growth phase. Amazing. Stella, no, not embryonic, because social media has been around for at least, I want to say 2 generations.
I would
So
say in using social media, people are not educated about social media. It was pushed onto them and by getting a phone, and then so they're not really socialized really how to use a phone or social media. They're not educated.
yeah, no, and I can agree with that as well. That would be more on like the consumer analysis side. So when we're talking about buyers and power of buyers and that kind of stuff, but for the industry in itself, social media would be more in the growth phase. It wouldn't be embryonic because of how long it's been in existence. So
Okay,
that
I
also
understand.
yeah, that contributes a great too. There's only so long that a company would really spend in being in that beginning phase
I
before
agree.
we expected, yeah, that it grows.
I
Perfect.
agree. I agree.
Awesome. Awesome. Perfect. And then we have self-driving cars. And as you can see, those fall in the embryonic phase. So does everybody understand that? And we understand that self-driving cars are not electric cars. Do we know that?
Wow.
Okay, right. So I have a professor that was recently, I want to say Amsterdam. If I'm lying, then I'm flying. But she was in a city where it was completely navigated by self-driving cars. You don't call in, you call whatever, and the company was there. I wrote it down because I actually want to invest in a few stock. But
Yeah.
you call that company the way you call up Uber on your phone, whatever your app, and a self-driving car is what picks you up, no person. Right. So that's advanced. Some of us can't even fathom it yet. In this Western world, we're not even thinking that, but there are places where it's completely developed and that tech is implemented. So shakeout phase, we've got technology there. Technology is in the shakeout. Hopefully everybody understands that. Thank God, Stella, you said robotics. I'm glad. Shakeout
Thank you.
is
Thank you.
yeah. Yeah. So it's been developed, right? It's been developed. We know tech. We can understand tech to an extent. It doesn't mean we fully encompass what it's about, but we understand tech to an extent. We understand it enough to build on it, to use it, to continue to innovate with it. We can use it's malleable, right? We get that. So it's in the shakeout phase. When you think shakeout, think of your hands, go like this and think, is this available? Is it touchy? Do we mess with it? Do we play with it? Are we using it now? Is everyone using it? Think of that. When you think of the companies that are in the shakeout phase or things that are in the shakeout industry, think like that. Is it tangible now? Is everyone on it? And that's kind of where it will come to mind. I'm going to save your questions just a second. And then we have banking, which is the industry that's in the mature phase. And I know that somebody mentioned banking before. Banking is in the mature phase. So don't confuse mature with the fact that it's on decline. It's not. It is just established. So like we said, when something's being shaken out, we got lots of hands on it. Everybody's picking at it, trying to use it, trying to innovate it, iterate it, whatever the case may be. When something's in its mature phase, it's good. You know, you're mature, you're good. Banking's established, rules are established, these type of things. Yeah, there's always room for change and growth, but for the most part, that industry operates how it operates. If you're alive, you probably have a bank account unless something's up, whatever the case may be, but that is maturity, right? Banking. And then last but not least, I think somebody mentioned this as well, not specifically miscellaneous manufacturing, but I know someone said car manufacturing or something of that sort. And it is. With tech, miscellaneous manufacturing is on the decline. I'm glad you asked that, Stella, about travel. No matter what you ever hear in the media, I'm so glad this question came up. Travel is never on the decline. Remember that I said that.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. And then we have a hand from Aaliyah. We can go ahead with that one.
No, that was an accident. I probably forgot to put it down. My bad.
Okay, perfect. Okay, perfect. So yes, yeah, Julia, I know that's a happy one for you to hear. Yeah, travel is never on the decline. So, and there's a big difference, especially being an investor myself. I won't get deep into it, but there's a big difference between what we call technical analysis when we're looking at, okay, trades and moves that we want to make technical, meaning you're watching the media, you're just kind of keeping up to date with what's on the surface. And then you've got actual like quantitative analysis. When you're an investor, you want to look at PE ratios and performance and that kind of stuff of a stock to really get in there. two different things. So when we're talking about travel, the media has done a lot of things, especially during COVID and that kind of stuff, to convey that this is like an up and down industry. Travel and tourism, it's up and up, and it'll probably always be up and up. Nairobi, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. How long, what's the window for a company to be in the embryo stage?
The embryonic stage. I'm glad that you asked that because it came up before. To be honest with you, we'll say on paper, the government maybe gives about 5 years. Let's say like for most for-profit enterprises, you have like a 5 year, like set up,
Okay.
overhead, grace period. Personally, if I was giving any sort of business advice, I would say you don't want to pass 3 years. You don't want to pass 3 years in the embryonic stage, in the seeded stage. Sometimes companies are able to still kind of propel and push forward, but if there's no motion in that first 3 to 5 is really pushing it. There might be other companies people can attest to, but typically, if you've spent 5 years in that embryonic phase and nothing's shaken up, you're probably yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Any more questions there on the life cycle? But that doesn't mean, don't be discouraged. Like if anybody has a business that they've had for more than 5 years, don't think like, okay, my business is just written off. There's other factors to consider. If you haven't been working on it, you've been taking a break from it. That's not like a embryonic, like non-lucrative dead business. That's like something you've taken a step back from. Maybe you want to get back into to be able to get through that phase type of thing.
I do have a question.
Yeah.
So I guess wanted to know your opinion on, say, if a company is, say, is it possible for a company to be in two different phases depending on where the company is, or would it just be the more dominant phase would be the overall phase?
I would go with the dominant phase because these type of analysis, and I'll let this be my last one. These type of analysis are typically, like, the reason we do analysis is to help with critical decision making or project management, like these kind of things. And this type of analysis is so critical that being in two different phases could literally be the determinant change in a decision. Does that make sense? Like if you're in growth or you're in shakeout and you're trying to decide a question like, oh, okay, should I introduce this new product? Depending on what phase you're in is going to influence, or what phase you identify with is going to influence whether or not that is even a good idea. Does that answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, perfect. And then Morley said, my business started out with service and then moved away to production, and that moved quickly. Exactly. Right. And knowing where your business falls, like for example, knowing if you're on the decline. So if you have business, your business was doing well, it hit peak or something like that with services, and then now you're on the decline, you need to identify that, right? Because of identifying that is how Morley was aware that she needed to kind of stick and move or iterate from where she was in business, add a service or whatever the case may be, right? And we are 11:30, folks. I will sum up here with your key points, your industry analysis checklist. Sakshi, can I get that slide? That's slide 24. Perfect. So you want to make sure you've done your industry overview. You want to look at market demand and market potential. You want to review your competitive landscape, which we discussed, the regulatory environment, which is pretty much, again, another term for those barriers to entry, and then the industry trends and opportunities. So which was the last little chart that we took a look at in terms of industry trends. And the word opportunities is paired with it there because knowing the industry trends is how you're able to find loopholes for opportunities in any business. If you guys have additional questions and that kind of stuff, feel free. My handles are always available. Reach out, TSK Wealth, or at Nels. You can also email me at chanelsmith@TSK Wealth, and I'll put that in the chat. Is there any other questions, any last minute burning questions from anybody?
I have a question.
Go ahead.
Will we be receiving a copy of these slides?
Yeah, I'm gonna provide them to the BBPA, and then they're really good at making sure the resources are always accessible to you guys. I know the videos go on YouTube and everything, and then I will be providing the BBPA with my slides if I haven't already, so they will make that available to you guys so that you can correlate it with today's session.
Okay, and is it possible to get the contact for the BBPA in terms of email for who we need to reach out to in order to receive it?
Oh yeah, for sure. So the Stephanie's not in here today. The BBPA is in here, but at the end you'll see their handles and follow them at the BBPA. That's on Instagram. Yeah.
And I'd also like to thank you for your time and the information you provided. It was super knowledgeable, and being in other incubators or other calls, I haven't seen anyone put their stuff together the way you have. So great job.
Wow, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm not good with compliments. I really appreciate that. My cheeks are so hot. But I really, really appreciate that, guys. Thank you. And I appreciate your time and participation. This gives me life. It gives me so much energy. You guys are not the only ones benefiting. I had a great session today. We even went over time. I'm excited. And next week, we'll be bringing it all together too. So if you guys do have questions and stuff like that, I'll start next week, how I started this week, open up the floor and that kind of stuff so you could get those things out the way. Sounds good. Okay. All right. Perfect. Yeah. And I put the handles there. My email's there. BBPA's there. And in the outro, wait for the outro because you'll see the upcoming events and the BBPA's handles in our outro.
Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you. I appreciate your participation. And Aaliyah's going to go ahead and take us out, lead us out there. Thank you, guys.